She got everything she asked for: the relationship, the guy who actually calls, the commitment that used to feel impossible to find. He's present, he's trying, he's there. And somehow, she's still looking around like something's missing. She can't name it. He can't find it. And everyone around them just throws their hands up and says, well, that's just how it goes. No. Stop right there. Because that answer is the intellectual equivalent of giving up. And if you're someone who actually wants to understand human behavior, not just survive it, then you deserve better than a shrug. So, let's crack this open. Imagine this. You've been in a relationship for about 2 years. The early electricity was real, the kind where you'd rearrange your whole schedule just to see her for an hour. That energy was mutual. She was all in. Then, gradually, she got quieter, more distant. Started finding fault in things that never bothered her before. You fixed those things. New things appeared. You're standing there with a scorecard full of effort and zero clarity on what the actual game is. Here's what almost nobody explains. Desire and contentment don't coexist in the same space. They're running on completely different operating systems. Contentment is about what you have. Desire is about what you're reaching toward. And here's the part that rewires everything. Desire, by its very design, requires a gap, a distance between where you are and where something better might be. The moment that gap disappears, the desire shuts off. This isn't a character flaw. It's not unique to women. It's a fundamental feature of the human mind called hedonic adaptation. The brain's tendency to normalize any stable condition, good or bad. Think about your first car. The first month you drove it, you noticed every detail. 6 months later, it was just your car. The car didn't change. Your brain recalibrated. That recalibration happens in relationships too, and it happens fast. What's the move when you understand this? You stop trying to eliminate the wanting entirely. You stop believing that if you stack enough effort, enough gifts, enough availability, the restlessness will finally disappear. It won't, because the wanting isn't the problem. It's the signal. Your real job is to understand what that signal is actually pointing at. And that's where the entire conversation shifts. Pay close attention to this. A woman says, "You never make an effort anymore." Taken literally, that sounds like a complaint about logistics, date nights, restaurants, maybe a weekend trip. But if you sit with it, if you actually translate the emotional frequency, it has almost nothing to do with logistics. It's about how she felt when you did make an effort, like she was worth the planning, like she was someone you thought about when she wasn't in the room. The specific request is just a container for the feeling she's trying to recover. Here's a real scenario that illustrates this. Daniel and his girlfriend Priya had been together for 4 years. First year, he was all in, planned everything, remembered small details, made her feel like the center of something. Then work escalated, life got heavier, and without either of them noticing, he stopped initiating. Not because he stopped caring, he just stopped demonstrating it. Priya started picking at things, the way he said things, the time he got home, the friends he prioritized. He'd address each complaint, and within weeks, a new one would surface. He told his friends she was impossible. She told her friends she felt like a roommate. Both descriptions were accurate. Both were symptoms of the same root thing. The thing she actually needed wasn't solved by any individual fix. She needed evidence, ongoing, updated, living evidence, that she was still a conscious choice. Not just someone he had, but someone he kept actively choosing. Notice this pattern. When that evidence quietly disappears from a relationship, most people don't say, "I feel like I've become a default rather than a priority." That level of clarity is rare. Instead, the feeling attaches to whatever's nearby and surfaces as irritability, criticism, emotional withdrawal. It's not manipulation. It's misdirected emotional communication. What actually helps? Listen underneath the words. When a specific complaint comes up, sit with it long enough to ask, what emotional state is this request connected to? What feeling is she reaching toward? Answer that question. And you've gone from patching leaks to actually fixing the pipe. This next part is where most conventional relationship advice quietly fails you. The standard guidance is straightforward. Be consistent. Show commitment. Make her feel stable. And none of that is wrong exactly. But there's a version of stability that slowly turns into something problematic. And a lot of people are living inside it right now without realizing it. There are two completely different emotional experiences that get lumped under the word security. The first is emotional security, the feeling that you're genuinely seen, that your presence in someone's life is meaningful, that the connection is real. That kind of security is deeply attractive. It's the foundation of real intimacy. The second type is what we might call certainty without aliveness, the absolute knowledge that nothing will ever change, that your partner isn't going anywhere, that everything is stable. That type of security is comfortable, but comfort, sustained long enough without any counterbalance, can quietly drain the life out of a relationship. Wrap your head around this for a second. Have you ever noticed that the dynamic in a relationship subtly shifts after one partner takes on a bold new challenge, a career pivot, a major creative project, a demanding fitness goal? Not because anything in the relationship changed structurally, but because one of the people in it became, suddenly, someone still in motion, still becoming something. And motion is magnetic in a way that stillness simply is not. Relationship therapist Esther Perel has written about this extensively. The idea that desire needs space to exist, not absence, not emotional unavailability, but genuine psychological room. When you become completely predictable, entirely transparent, entirely accessible, entirely defined by the relationship, you stop being someone she relates to. You become more like a feature of her environment. And features don't create attraction. People do. The fix isn't to manufacture mystery artificially or play emotional games. That approach destroys trust and deserves to. The real answer is simpler and more demanding. Maintain your own becoming. Keep having goals she doesn't manage. Keep developing interests she doesn't fully map. Keep investing in your own life in ways that have nothing to do with her approval, not as a strategy, as a standard. A man who is genuinely in motion, who is building something, learning something, becoming something, generates a kind of pull that no amount of romantic effort can replicate. You stop being someone she evaluates based on what you do for her, and you become someone she chooses to stay close to because of who you are. All right? The part that creates the most confusion, and honestly the most resentment, is this. You solve the thing she pointed at, and within a few months, a new thing appears. You become more emotionally available, and suddenly the complaint shifts to you being too available. You start planning things again, and somehow that becomes pressure. You pull back slightly, and now you don't care enough. The whole cycle feels designed to be unwinnable. Here's the actual mechanism. Human emotional needs operate in layers. When the deepest layer is unmet, that's the only one your nervous system cares about. Everything else is noise. But the moment that layer gets satisfied, it drops out of your awareness entirely. And the next layer, the one that was quietly waiting underneath, rises to the surface and becomes the new dominant need. This isn't specific to romantic relationships. It's how all human motivation works. Think about any time you landed something you'd been pursuing hard, a job, a goal, a milestone. For a moment, it felt like everything. Then, within weeks, the satisfaction faded, and something new started pulling at you. The goal didn't fail you. Your hierarchy of needs simply moved to the next level. Relationships have a nearly identical structure. Early on, the primary question is existential. Is this real? Can I trust this? Is this person actually going to stay? Once that gets established, those questions go quiet and a different set emerges. Do I still feel genuinely desired as an individual, not just as a partner? Am I still being pursued, or am I just being maintained? Once that's addressed, another layer. Are we growing together, or are we slowly growing apart? Every time you solve for one layer, you've actually succeeded. The problem is treating it like failure when the next layer surfaces. Consider this dynamic. When someone enters a relationship coming from a place of real emotional depletion, previous heartbreak, a difficult family history, a period of genuine loneliness, the early emotional need is enormous. She needs more reassurance, more presence, more consistent demonstration of care. And if you're the one who provides that, something quietly transformative happens. As she fills up emotionally, as she rebuilds her sense of self, The person who emerges is different from the person who entered the relationship. She needs things that look nothing like what she needed before. To you, the bar looks like it rose. To her, she finally has enough solid ground to stand on that she can see what she actually wants. What cuts through this? Stop reacting to each complaint as a standalone event. Take a wider view. Ask yourself, what emotional layer are we actually at in this relationship right now? Have that conversation with genuine curiosity, not frustration. Something like, I want to understand what you actually need from us right now, not just the surface stuff. Said without an agenda, said as someone who genuinely wants to know. That conversation moves more ground than 6 months of guessing. Now we get to the part that's uncomfortable to say, but it matters more than almost everything else in this conversation. Sometimes the constant wanting isn't about the relationship at all. Sometimes it's about her relationship with herself. A person who doesn't feel genuinely alive in their own life, fulfilled by their work, energized by their own ambitions, nourished by real friendships, will often look to the relationship to generate what they're not generating internally. More intensity, more romance, more proof of being loved. Not because the relationship is actually failing, but because the relationship has become the primary source of meaning, and that's an impossible weight to put on any one human connection. Sit with that for a moment. No volume of effort from you resolves that. Not because you're insufficient, but because the source of the hunger is in the wrong place. Someone emotionally thirsty can keep eating and never stop feeling hungry, because what they need isn't food. When the wanting more is rooted in someone's unaddressed relationship with themselves, their sense of purpose, their identity outside of the relationship, their ability to generate their own sense of worth, the cycle becomes genuinely exhausting. You increase effort, there's a brief relief, then the pull returns, bigger often than before, because the underlying thing was never actually touched. Worth saying clearly, this is not a critique specific to women. Men drift into the exact same pattern, just wearing different clothes, becoming obsessively focused on work to avoid confronting emotional emptiness, using achievement the same way. The mechanism is human, but you need to be honest with yourself about whether it's happening in your specific relationship, because that honesty determines everything about how you respond. You cannot fill that gap for someone else. What you can do, what is actually within your reach, is stop absorbing the entire weight of it as though it's your failure to solve. You can love someone completely and still hold them responsible for their own interior work. That's not detachment. That's respect for their full humanity. The right response here isn't a confrontation. It's an honest conversation that comes from care. Something like, I want this to actually work between us. And I genuinely wonder if some of what you're looking for isn't something I can give you. And I think some part of you might already know that. That conversation, delivered without accusation, opens something that most couples never get close to. So after all of this, after the frameworks and the layers and the uncomfortable truths, what concretely shifts things? Not more effort aimed in the same direction you've already been going. Not bigger gestures when the real connection has quietly eroded. Not performance of any kind. 3 things, and they have to work together. The first is self-respect that doesn't require negotiation. When you carry yourself as someone with clear standards, someone who doesn't apologize for taking up space, who doesn't over-explain every decision, who doesn't shrink to avoid conflict, you change the relational gravity between 2 people. This isn't arrogance. It's not dominance for its own sake. It's the grounded quality of a person who knows who they are and doesn't need constant external confirmation to stay anchored. People are drawn toward that, not because it's strategic, but because it's rare and it's real. The second is actual presence, not just proximity. There's a version of being physically present that registers as total absence. You can spend an entire evening in the same room with someone and never once actually be there. Real presence is harder than that. It means the phone goes away, the mental checklist goes quiet, and the person in front of you gets your full attention. Not because you're performing attentiveness, but because you've made a genuine decision to be there. 20 minutes of that quality is worth more than 3 hours of distracted company. The third is visible, ongoing growth. Not the phrase, I'm working on myself, as something you say when things get difficult. Actual evidence of it. Skills you're building. Thinking that's sharpening. Work that means something to you. a direction you're moving in. When a woman can see that the man she's with is genuinely still in process, still reaching for something, the relationship stops feeling like a ceiling and starts feeling like a horizon. These three things, practice consistently over time, shift the entire texture of what you're building together. The wanting more doesn't disappear, but it changes character entirely. It stops pointing at lack. It starts pointing at possibility. There's a version of wanting more that comes from emptiness, and there's a version that comes from genuine aliveness. Two people who are each full enough in themselves to want more of what they're building together. That second version is worth building toward. Here's where everything lands. The story that women always want more, as some inevitable, exhausting truth, something to be endured or worked around, that story serves nobody. It lets him avoid developing genuine emotional intelligence. It lets her avoid confronting her own interior work. And it keeps both people locked in a cycle that neither of them would consciously choose. The actual truth is simpler and harder at the same time. People want to feel genuinely alive inside a relationship. They want to feel chosen, not once, but continuously. They want to feel like the person they're with is still in motion, still becoming, still paying attention. And when those things fade, the reaching begins. More, 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 because something real is missing. And the only available language for that absence is dissatisfaction. The moment you understand that mechanism, really understand it, not just intellectually, but in how you actually show up, you stop experiencing it as an attack and start experiencing it as information. Information you can actually use. That's the shift. From confusion to clarity. From resentment to strategy. From surviving the dynamic to genuinely understanding it. And from that place, everything becomes possible.